Good morning, golf world. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Cover One Golf Podcast. I am Aaron Quinn. I'm one of your hosts, and with me is Dave Tilton. You might know him from the Air Raid Hour, Bills Guys, and Chris Kepner, producer of the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. I'm sure you've seen him around from Twitter Spaces and helping Greg and I out. Good morning, gentlemen. What a morning in the golf world. How's it going?
What a morning to wake up to some of this news. I thought it was a joke at first. Like
Yeah.
I before I even got on the Twitter, I had a text that was like, "Oh, Scottie Scheffler might be late for his round today." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like to one of my friends. I'm like, and then I go online and I see like all this stuff happening, and I'm like, they give us a nice little piece of information here to talk about on our first show.
Yeah, man. Chris, good morning. How are you, bud?
I'm doing all right. Just like I was saying before we went live here, I got a little caught off guard by all the Scottie Scheffler news and almost forgot that we were supposed to jump on here right at 9. So
Yeah.
it's just crazy, man. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, I did not expect, I thought we were just going to come on. We had a bit of a plan for how the show was going to roll here today. And we're going to bump it around a little bit. But same as Tilt, like mornings for us is our kids get up super early and we let them just kind of go downstairs and hang out. My wife and I just read and hang out. And my phone was just showing all these reports. And I was the same as you, Till. I was like, there's no way this got to be a fake Jeff Darlington account or something. Like Scottie Scheffler. There's no way he's like the nicest guy in the world. There's no way he's getting arrested. What is going on? And then I started seeing more and more. I was like, oh my God, this is
I mean, I guess
real thing.
we're assuming that everyone watching knows what's going on. Maybe
Yes.
you want to catch everyone up
Yes.
just in case they don't know.
Yeah, real quick here. This morning at Valhalla, first of all, there was an actual incident at Valhalla this morning. There was a pedestrian struck. I believe it was by a bus, and it was a fatal injury. And so there was a heavy police force at Valhalla this morning. For those that don't know, when you attend these types of events, there's always quite a bit of force out, but it's usually security, rental cops, some police presence in terms of helping people get in and out. They're golf clubs, so it's not used to heavy amounts of traffic like this. And so there was a police force, but probably more than normal. And it seems like Scottie maybe tried to go around what he thought was security this morning. He had an early tee time with Wyndham Clark and Brian Harmon. I think they were like the second or third tee time off this morning. So he was trying to get there, went around, didn't realize he was supposed to stop, didn't realize it was a real police officer. He probably did not know there was a fatal incident this morning as well. And the police pulled him out of his vehicle and detained him and arrested him. And he has been booked at one of the Louisville police departments. And I do at this time at 9:03 a.m. He has been released and has a tee time set for later in the afternoon. The USGA rules do allow for exceptional circumstances to shift tee times. Usually if you miss a tee time, that's it. Like you're disqualified, but the USGA does have exemptions for this stuff. So that's pretty much what we know and where it's at. Is the number one golfer in the world this morning was handcuffed and processed by police. He has multiple charges. I think is four different charges: second degree, evading the police,
Class
assault
C
on an officer.
felony assault. Yeah.
Yeah.
If the thing that I saw was legit, like that's no joke right there.
Yeah, no, they're serious charges. I think because of the fatal incident, the officers were taking it seriously. There's a lot of memes and jokes, and I participated in it too. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I expect a lot of lawyers to get involved in this and work it out. But Scottie Scheffler is going to play golf today. And that is really ultimately all that matters is they cleared it up in time. Nobody got hurt. Nothing serious happened from this incident. He'll hopefully get back here. Although he's going to be a lot like the rest of us who are like running late for your tee time and don't have the time to warm up as much as you thought.
But
you did.
we don't have the USGA to move our tee times for
That's
us.
right. That's right.
We get to see what Scottie looks like in orange out on the course, maybe.
Oh, yeah, it'll be Malbon gear.
He's got to call Ricky up for some of that Puma orange.
Puma orange and some of Jason Day Malbon baggy pants there. Real quick before we dig into what is going on here this weekend and the PGA Championship, for those who don't know what we are up to and what we're doing, this is something that behind the scenes, we had a group text going for a while of we're all golfers, not all good, but some of us are good. Some of us aren't great, but we love the game of golf and we love pro golf and we love talking about our own games and we love talking about golf philosophy. And for a while, every time we would be talking about it and engaging on Twitter, there was a few people would be like, there should be a Cover One Golf. There should be like, you guys should make this a thing. And I know David Tilton had talked about wanting to make golf content in his past and wanting to get this done. And I've talked about it, and Nate's talked about it, and Chris, you and I have talked about it. And so I was finally kind of just like, let's do it, guys. What do we have to lose? We have the platform. We have the capabilities. This is something we do every week, as everybody that follows Cover One knows. And so we're giving this a try. This is a podcast that is going to be talking about professional golf, the world of professional golf. We all follow it pretty close, and that's mostly what our DMs are all about. And then our own golf games, which is something I think the best thing that's come out of our DMs is the sharing our golf game, sharing our own journeys, sharing our practice. And I believe, I don't know about you guys, I think that might be the most relatable content that we have. There's tons of podcasts where you can hear about the PGA, and there's even tons of podcasts where you can hear about golf games, but I listen to a lot of them, and it's a lot of really, really good golfers talking about playing scratch golf and how to get to that type of golf, where we run the gamut of single index to high index players here. And we all have different parts of our journey. We all have different time to invest into our game. We all have different things that we're working on. And I think that's going to make for some relatable content, because I think we connect probably more with the gamut of golfers that are actually out there consuming this stuff. So what do you guys think on what we're trying to do here?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. Also, like the path we've kind of taken as far as like me moving out of the New York area, now being in North Carolina, kind of not knowing what was going to happen as far as like when I was growing up in the area. Like, look, North Carolina, maybe and the Carolinas in general, probably one of the best areas in the country for golf. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like I was around it a lot. My dad lives in Pinehurst, so I definitely around golf a lot growing up. And for me, it was like the most interesting thing, I think, like as I was like kind of growing into where I got to now, was like going from sort of being, just kind of out there hacking it around and like just sort of doing whatever, to really kind of focusing on like the rules and like making sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and like having like a real handicap, and going from like more or less just like that type of casual type game to, not that it's not casual anymore, but really kind of looking at like analytics and stats and like making sure I'm doing things the right way. So like I'm honest with myself, right? And I think that's the big thing that we can probably take into this podcast too with a lot of the golfers out there, is like being honest with yourself about what your game is like, and like about how you post your scores or how you score your game, is like really the thing that I think we kind of talked about this in the beginning, was like there's no benefit to lying to yourself about like what you're doing on the course if you're really trying to get better. And I think there's a lot of people out there that probably share that mindset with us. Like, none of us are that great. So it's like, you might as well be honest with yourself about what you want to work on and like the things that you want to do. So I'm excited about this. Like, it's a new piece of, or type of content that we get to talk about, because it's obviously been about everything I do on, otherwise it's all Bills related. My entire Twitter handle is centered around Bills stuff. I really don't post anything else other than Bills stuff, but starting to do more of the golf stuff, which is cool. And so, yeah, I'm psyched about this whole thing.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like talking about this for as long as we did, kind of thinking, strategizing, thinking about what it might be. And then just talking about our own personal games, like you mentioned, has been a huge help for me, I think, in sort of like refocusing around the game. And it's just been a huge benefit. And I'm hoping that that's part of what we can kind of bring to the community here, is, not only this podcast, but also our presence on social media, like at Cover One Golf on Twitter. Just to be able to just share the highlights and the lowlights from our rounds, and from our development over the season, goals, benchmarks, that sort of thing, that can, help you if you want to improve. Like, it's helped me. I want to get better. I'm not a great golfer, but I did make a good amount of improvement in the last year. I think just from having that sort of community atmosphere around it, and having those conversations about the game. So anyone who's here for this first show, thank you for being here. We hope you stick around, and certainly like get at us with what you're doing in your own games, because we want to hear about it. We want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you talk about a community, and that is sort of what we're trying to build here. So, if you're tuning in here and you haven't followed along with any of this, one, if you're here on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We are a new channel under the Cover One brand, so we need to build up that subscription base. So every time we are going live, also follow us on Twitter at Cover One Golf. We are trying to build that up a little bit as well. And then if you are a member of our Cover One Pass, we have a golf channel within Slack that has been a lot of fun. And we ran a fantasy PGA thing through that. We're just trying to connect. We're copied something that I love from the Golfers Journal, which is called the Index Experiment, where they're all trying to get their indexes down and just building that community of talking about our rounds and talking about our deficiencies and getting encouragement from other golfers. Because you do go on Twitter and you do listen to these podcasts and stuff, and you see nothing but scratch golfers or people maybe over exaggerating everyone drives 300 yards and everybody gets onto the green from 150. And we're trying to have real conversations about this stuff and encourage people to get out and practice and participate, because it is a fun, healthy hobby. That's a really difficult game to play. And so we'll get a little bit into our games. We're going to introduce our games a little bit and our goals and some of the off-season stuff we did. But we're going to switch it up a little bit and get right back into PGA Championship here this morning, because the hottest news in golf right now is, one, we have a major championship going on at Valhalla with some low scores. It was a great day of golf yesterday, but now you have the number one golfer in the world being detained by police this morning. Twitter is going nuts. The memes are just rolling in. It is a crazy day for golf. And Tyler N saying, I think this was good for golf. And I don't, just in a way, like the old saying, no news is bad news, right? All publicity is good publicity. And while it stinks for Scottie, and I feel bad for him, and Meredith was at home with their new baby, this is probably a very chaotic morning for the Scheffler family, I'm sure. And those charges are serious. And so I'm sure that is weighing heavy on him. But golf has had a very difficult year and a half, 2 years in terms of the conversation surrounding this sport. And it seems like, at least on Twitter, and I know Twitter's not real life, but at least on Twitter, there's people that I don't even know that talk about golf right now this morning that are discussing golf in the golf world. And so is this good? Is this going to draw some attention to the major and maybe bump up some of the eyes on golf that we've been looking for?
Well, I think for one, right, you talk about Scottie Scheffler, who's been on this run, and the fact is that personality-wise, he's not the biggest personality, right? So in a way, this kind of maybe gives him a little bit of a legend around him now, right?
Humanizes
This
him.
Martha Stewart moment.
It's been very one-sided, at least from what I've seen on Twitter, around the support for Scottie versus the other way around. And a lot of these things you kind of get pretty split opinion, but it seems like everyone's getting behind Scottie here. And this could be the moment where it kind of makes him a little bit more, okay, we're going to get behind him. It's not necessarily part of his personality, but it's going to be something now he carries with him going forward, that this is going to be something along his golf career that we look back on. And maybe we say, remember what happened to Scottie the Friday morning at Valhalla, and then all of a sudden he comes back and just tears it up today and shoots
Posts a 59 today.
yeah, just shoots something wild. But I do think it's good for golf because it's attention on the game one way or another, and people are probably now if you weren't interested in tuning in to Scottie Scheffler because you thought maybe he was boring to watch, which to me it's if you're an avid golfer, he's not. But if you're maybe more of a casual fan and you don't find his game super interesting, you might tune in now today to see what happens with him later in the day. And I do think it's, again, all publicity is good when it comes to this type of thing. Golf, you're right, has gone through some weird times over the last year plus, and I think ultimately this will help today, at least for this weekend. It will help.
Yeah. What do you think on that, Chris?
So I'm thinking more about Scottie personally and how this is going to affect him, because talk about a guy who is on just this crazy run. Beyond the last 5 tournaments, he's been playing great, but he won 4 out of the last 5 starts and placed second in the 5th one. So just someone who's just at the top of his game, possibly even getting better, which isn't crazy to think. How does something like this affect him? I like to, I'd like to believe that he could go out there and shoot a 59, but something tells me that he's going to be a little distracted, to say the least. And I'm just really curious to see, what happens when he's actually out on the course today.
Yeah, so we know they bumped his tee time back, so he should be able to get there and get some type of traditional warm up for him. It was going to be a weird week for Scottie Scheffler anyway this week, coming off of the birth of his son. That was big news at the Masters about if he's going to withdraw if Meredith gets pregnant, and then RBC sort of the same thing, and then obviously he took a break after the RBC Heritage. And the birth of his son happened over the last week. So then he came back, and in his first hole, for those that didn't see, in his first hole from the first hole, he dunked an approach shot for an eagle, which is the most Scottie Scheffler thing ever, to come back from a couple weeks absence and dunk an approach shot. And kind of to your point, Till, I think that is probably the thing that the casual fan doesn't appreciate necessarily about Scottie, because we were so spoiled with the charisma and the energy of Tiger Woods for 20 plus years of dominating golf and high energy and excitement and tons of emotion. And we'll never get that again. Most golfers are much more stoic, and Scottie represents that stoicism of golf. And like, he dunked that, and he just gave Ted Scott a little dap and continued on down walking to get his ball. Also was going to be a weird week for him. On Saturday, it was already announced he's going to have a guest caddy because Ted Scott's son's graduation is happening this weekend. And Ted Scott's very much a man of his family and faith, and he is going to attend his son's graduation. So that was a little bit of a kink coming into Scottie's weekend as well. But kind of to your point, Chris, I think the thing that I find most fascinating about Scottie Scheffler is his mental approach to the game, right? We talk about his skills, his ball striking, all this ability. For a year and a half, he struggled in putting, and that was a constant conversation. He was dominating the field in strokes gained off the tee, from approach, greenside, and that was like 140th in putting. And he was still finishing top 10, almost guaranteed weekly. Until you and I joke about it it was like automatic top 10s for Scottie every time he took the field. But that mental approach, he's the guy, like even last night after he posts around, he's on the range until dark. Like, he is the grindiest golfer, the most mentally focused. You saw him at the Masters. Like, he just locks in. That mental focus is unbreakable. And this is probably going to be the biggest test to that, of getting arrested in the morning, having to deal with this. You have charges hanging over your head. You just had a baby. Like, life is just a roller coaster going into this week for Scottie Scheffler. And we've only seen stoic, calm, cool, collected on the golf course Scottie. If he continues that today, is he like totally unbreakable mentally? And everyone should figure out what it is that Scottie does to get into that mental state.
Well, I would say this, right? You talk about like Tiger and the charisma, like, and we heard a little bit from Scottie after the Masters, is like he doesn't like to lose, right? He said, I don't like losing, but he is very good at internalizing that. Whereas I think we saw a lot more outward emotion from Tiger on the course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think mentally, their approach and the grind and all that is pretty similar, honestly, when it comes to that. But you just don't see it outwardly as much from Scottie. The one thing I don't want to happen is if like he has like an average day today, for people to just like assume that like, okay, yes, there might be some correlation, right, between what's happened this morning and everything with that. But like I can already see the overreaction and be like, oh, like Scottie's run is over because like he didn't like let's not go there, right? If he has like an average day today and he's like right around even par, a little bit under, like I'm not like, that's not gonna be a big surprise to me. Even if he struggles a bit, because I think we saw yesterday, like there are some holes on this course. If you don't end up in the right spot, you can make a big number, right? We saw him freaking, what's his name, Block make a quadruple bogey on
Rom
the
had
second
a tough
hole
day
yesterday.
until the end.
Rom, yeah, and Rom came back and battled back at the end. So like, look, I think Xander's at round yesterday was an outlier. Everyone else was pretty much around, around that sort of similar type of style. There were some good scores, but like to me, Scottie, like I think he's still going to play well today. I just think like, with everything we've seen from him over the last year and a half, the outward, like maybe internally he's got something going on, but I don't think we're going to see anything outwardly that will like clue us in. He's just really good at kind of protecting that.
Yeah. Now, it's one thing I think that gets lost in the conversation about Scottie, and that is prior to Ted Scott's arrival on his bag, he was a little bit more emotional. You would see him throwing fits on the course when things weren't going well. And that was one of the concerns I think Ted Scott had before joining Scotty's bag was like, this is a young kid. He kind of throws fits around the golf course. Like, does he really want that again? He bagged for Bubba Watson, who's got a notorious personality for years. And I don't know that he wanted to go through that again. And I think that is probably outside of the conversation of Scottie Scheffler this morning with the arrest and stuff and how great he's been playing. I think the one thing that's been lost is the combo of Scottie Scheffler and Ted Scott. Ted Scott does not get enough credit for Scottie Scheffler's success as he should. I mean, Ted Scott, in terms of money earning on tour right now, I think he'd be in the top 20 of tour earners and money just from the success Scottie Scheffler's had. And
wasn't he second at one point?
He's up there. He's made more money than Rory up until Rory probably made more here with his win last week. But Ted Scott is a multiple Masters champion on multiple bags. Like, this guy is going to go down. He might go down as one of the greatest caddies of all time. And I think, we don't talk enough about those pairings probably because the golfer gets all the credit. But I do think Ted and his calmness and his, being sort of that senior person kind of brings that into Scotty's game. And you saw the respect after the Masters when Scotty was walking up to go do all the winners stuff at the clubhouse. He had Ted Scott. He waited for Ted and made Ted go up ahead of him. And that type of respect, I think, shows that we should maybe talk about the pairing more than we just talk about just the physical ability of what Scotty does on the golf course, because everybody talks about his course management. Everybody talks about his mental game. The caddy plays a huge role in how that all plays out on the course.
I mean, it really does. And like what I appreciate about Ted Scott is that he kind of like is a little bit in the background, right? Some of these other sort of, I guess, more prominent like caddy pairings we've seen Bones with JT and Phil. We've seen Greller with Spieth, like that duo, like there's always been a little bit of like more, I guess, flair between those guys. And like, they've gone through some ups and downs, but Ted Scott just kind of is that calm guy. He's like pretty steady in the background. Like, we appreciate what he does for Scotty and all these other guys, but he's never really been the type to like, not that I'm not saying like Greller and these other guys make it about themselves, but he's never been like the type to like even like want to be in the limelight, right? He just does his thing, and it is a great pairing, right? And that's such a huge piece of it. And we talk about like guys who change their caddies and then like it changes their whole game, right? For better or for worse. So like it definitely is important to have that caddy because he's the one that's with you. Like these guys have swing coaches now. They have psychiatrists, swing like
short
like
game
they have like a whole team around them. But the guy that's on the course with you for those 4 rounds is the caddy. So like that's going to be the guy that you need like more than anyone to kind of have that effect on you. And that pairing is pretty awesome right now.
Yeah, for sure. Let's switch it to sort of overall here PGA Championship, because I don't know about you guys. Obviously the Masters gets the most hype, the way they run it, the Masters app, like the prestige, it's almost Disney of golf. Like it's like perfection. It's probably major number 1, but in my opinion, the PGA Championship is major number 2 in my rankings of majors. I know there's been a lot of talk on golf Twitter about Valhalla not being a good enough course for the majors, and that the projections of scoring being too low, and maybe the winner being -20. Real quick before we get into where the leaderboard's at and what we expect going into the weekend, I have a thought on this, guys. I want to get your kind of opinion. I know like people want, especially at a PGA Championship, they want incredibly thick rough, right? That's just a challenge to get at. They want low scoring or they want 2 under rounds at the top. My take on this is I don't really care if it's low or high scoring or what the scoring is, as long as it's bunched up. I want going into Sunday, multiple guys in contention, going down to the final round. Like, I think that was probably the downside for the Masters with Scotty was so dominating that, through that front 9 at the final of the Masters, there was a little bit tight. And like, maybe if he slipped up, there could be somebody can make a run, but he pretty much dominated and put it away after like the 13th hole. And it was just kind of a matter of time watching him play it out. I want more like we saw at TPC, the Players Championship, where it was he's waiting on the range and doesn't know how things are going to play out. at the end of the round. And those are the kind of golf events that I want. So I don't care necessarily if everybody's at 16 under on Sunday, as long as it's bunched up with some of the top golfers in the world. Should we even care about what the score is versus what the level of competition is at the top? Chris, I'll let you lead off.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it matters. It's, everybody's playing the same course. So, we're really looking to see these golfers match up with each other, not so much with the course. I mean, it's interesting, sure, when the course is particularly difficult and you get those, 2 under final round, scores after 4 rounds. But it's also, I think, just as interesting when guys are out there making birdies and, it's a different sort of a tournament, but I don't see why that would be any less valuable, to be honest with you.
Yeah. How about you, Till? What's your thoughts on scoring in majors?
I mean, the U.S. Open's kind of been that traditionally the one that's associated with like the even par type.
Yeah.
Might win it. I don't really care too much. I think I'm with you. I think that the fact that it's bunched, it makes things more interesting. I think that when you have it bunched and then you have also the leaderboard the way it looks like right now with Finau, Rory, Scottie, Morikawa, and obviously you've got Xander at the top. Like, it is a nice looking leaderboard. Other guys are within striking distance, big names. Brooks is out there. Rahm is out there, and you have some others. Vic's -3. So like, it's good. It's a good bunch because you have a lot of the biggest names. And what's cool about the PGA Championship, right, is it's the only one where it's only professionals. The qualifications are cool because, like the Masters, if you've ever won a PGA Championship ever, you get to come back and play. So you get to see guys like John Daly come back and play in this event. And also Valhalla has hosted the PGA Championship numerous times and is probably home to one of the most iconic sort of shots with Tiger chasing the ball down in the hole, in back from 2000. So I don't mind it, and I think Valhalla is a pretty good course. There's plenty enough challenges out there for it, and so the scoring, again, yeah, you're playing against the others, like Kep said. It's not necessarily that I care so much what the total is at the end.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the leaderboard real quick. You kind of ran through it. It's Xander Schauffele, obviously posting a crazy round yesterday, really running away from the pack. I think you nailed it, Till, that this was an outlier of the day. I think everybody leading up to the round expected scoring to be like this and that we would have multiple people at 8 under or more. But it was just Xander playing great again from the start. This is his second 62 in a major. Which is kind of insane. I said it. I put a tweet yesterday. I'm sure a lot of our followers here at Cover One Golf will also be Bills fans. I hate to say it because I'm a Bills fan, but he's kind of like the Buffalo Bills right now of golf, where he's incredible and he's he's the second best player in the world, in my opinion right now, to Scottie Scheffler, but he just can't win, right? He can't get over the hump. He can't beat the Chiefs.
I hate that analogy so much, man.
It's true though, and he's got to get one. This might be his week to do it. I loved his attitude in the press conference though, talking about, he came right back out after a tough loss to Rory this past weekend, and that's the type of thing like Scottie's putting was, where the media is not going to leave Xander alone if he continues to be in contention and just not be able to close out victories. And he was like, hey, first of all, it's just Thursday. I shot a good round, but losing last week just drives me to be better here this week. And I love that from him. And losing in golf, he's still making a lot of money. Xander's having a really good year and he's doing pretty well for himself, but he's at the leaderboard -9 alone at the top. And then, I love to see it. You got Tony Finau, Thagala right there at 6 under with Mark Hubbard, Rory coming in with a 5 under yesterday. I think Rory was one of my picks for this weekend. I think that he might be able to break the Valhalla curse. We haven't seen him win a major since his last time in Valhalla years ago. Robert McIntyre right there, 5 under, Hodge, Tom Kim as well, Detry, Morikawa, who we talked about this in one of our Cover One.
He had a great back 9 yesterday.
Yeah, we talked about him on Spaces of being one of those guys like a Justin Thomas, like a Jordan Spieth, who was really seemingly not finding his game over the last couple of years. But since we talked about it, man, he has been right there in the top 10 almost every time we see him. So he's really starting to find his game again. Maverick McNealy right in there. Brooks Koepka at 4 under, Moore, Eckhart. Scottie Scheffler at 4 under. And then it goes into a bunch of guys stacked up here at 3 under. Hovland, Hadwin, Homa, DeChambeau, or some names that you guys will all know here. But this is interesting scoring. Interesting leaderboard to your point. We talk a lot about the state of golf. Everybody's saying golf's not as competitive because of the live split and we're not seeing great golf, but every week almost, except for the ones, that aren't necessarily signature events or some of the ones guys takes weeks off. These are the leaderboards week in and week out. And I just listed probably 10, 15 names of like high class, world-class golfers. They're almost in that top 10 every single week. Is the state of golf that bad, or are we just seeing this because it's a major?
No, I think the state of golf, I mean, look, ultimately we want to see everyone, like we love these majors now, especially. We've always loved the majors, but we love them now more so in the last year because we get to see Rahm, Koepka, Phil, like we get to see these guys all play together and like that's great. But the week to week state of the PGA Tour, I'm still obviously quite interested in it. You've got the history of the events. You've got guys like you saw Malnati several weeks ago about how he just like how much that winning meant to him and just like how much a win on the PGA Tour can like change these guys' lives in the sense that they get their tour card for 3 years, they get to play in the majors, and like you can tell there's a lot more on the line week to week when it comes to the competition on the PGA Tour than live. Now, I still want to see these live guys play in the majors, and I still want to ultimately at the end of the day see all these guys come back and play together more regularly, but the state of the PGA, like if you watch Full Swing, I'm sure most of the people watching this have watched it. Like there are guys that are young guys coming up that are interesting. Tom Kim, Tagala, like you've got guys that younger guys that are going to make the future of the PGA pretty good. Maverick McNealy, unless your dad's ability. Hey, he's a really good putter too. So
he's always
we'll
leading in
see.
strokes
But,
gained putting. Yeah.
Yeah. But you've got like Victor Hovland and you've got Tagala, you've got Tom Kim, you've got these guys that are like the young guns on the PGA Tour that have personalities, right? And they're interesting. And I think Full Swing has done a really good job highlighting some of these guys as well. But if you love golf, you're gonna watch the PGA every week, regardless of what you think of the field. So that's kind of where I land with it.
Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Pulled up this comment from M Stock. I think golf is struggling from what tennis experienced. Lots of great players, but no one that really moves the viewer needle, I think is what he means there.
Yeah.
There's no Borg, Connors, or McEnroe that moves people to turn it on, like you were talking about Tiger earlier, versus kind of the demeanor that Scottie Scheffler shows on the course. And yeah, I mean, would a bigger personality at the forefront of the PGA Tour bring more people to the game? Maybe, but golf has also been growing quite a bit over the recent years, and people are coming to the game in different ways, I think, and it's almost interesting to me seeing that maybe the game itself drawing people in as opposed to the personalities playing it, and you're getting more people watching. And you're seeing good golf. I mean, a lot of these guys, if you watch Full Swing, a lot of these guys are easy to root for. So, obviously there's all this sort of drama going on with Liv and everything, which I don't really want to dive into, but David said it would be nice to see more of a resolution there and see those guys playing together more. But regardless of the lack of those big personalities, I do think there are a lot of really likable guys on tour that it makes it watching it enjoyable for me, even outside of you're seeing great golf week in and week out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll definitely have conversations about live because you can't talk golf without talking live golf right now. That is exactly what they wanted to do, was be disruptors in the industry. I agree with you, Chris, that, I think one of the biggest issues I have with the conversation around golf is the way it's framed. I don't think is totally accurate to actually what's happening. The media, the way they talk about it. So we hear a lot about interest in golf lacking, but then we see statistics from the golf industry where everything's up. Golf rounds are up, simulator round golf is up, everything's up. And then we'll see TV data that shows interest in golf is down because the ratings of US TV is lower. That doesn't account for international ratings. It also doesn't account for streaming, which I don't know about you guys, but I pay for a stupid amount of services because the way golf is you have to have ESPN Plus, you have to have Peacock at certain times, you have to have some type of cable service to get the different channels. Like yesterday, I watched on ESPN Plus, I watched on the Golf Channel, I watched on whatever it was, CBS, ESPN. Like you had to move around to watch golf. And so I don't know that the TV statistics are necessarily accurate. We saw with the Masters, that was a huge conversation that Masters viewing was down 20%. And from the Tiger Woods 2004, it was down a huge amount from when Tiger Woods. And that's also part of the problem is we're grading interest in watching golf on a curve of peak Tiger Woods. Like we all knew, the entire golf world knew post Tiger golf was going to take a hit. I mean, we're talking about a player that impacted his sport more than any athlete has impacted a sport in the history of sports. Like Jordan is probably the next comparable in terms of like global outreach and interest in a sport. Tiger blew that away because golf started at a much lower point than the NBA. Like NBA had stars. You had Bird, Magic, the 80s, and then Jordan came along and just elevated everything to an astronomical level, where Tiger took a game that was kind of boring, very elitist, only for old white guys, and brought an entire generation, this whole new generation of golfers you see is a Tiger Woods generation of golfers. Till you and I talk about it all the time, like that's where we were raised into the game of golf. I played in high school. In the late 90s, I started getting into it, and it wasn't cool. Like it was just starting to get cool for young kids to be involved in the game of golf. Now, when I go to the course, I see young kid. My kid is 8 years old, and he's participating in golf instructional stuff and First Tee Western New York. Like that didn't exist 20 years ago, and a lot of that's just because of Tiger Woods. And so we knew there was going to be a shift in who the needle movers were and the interest and stuff like that. But the Masters. So there was a 20% decrease. I know the math's not accurate, but then there was a huge increase in the use of the Masters app, the use of ESPN Plus. Golf is the number one thing on the ESPN Plus app of what is streamed on that app. And so I think it's a little bit insincere in the way that is framed, because you'll see a bunch of articles that come out. It's like, oh, interest in golf is down. This is nothing, this is a huge issue. But then they're not always saying like, well, but all the app streaming is up and all this other stuff about attendance at events and things like that. And so I think the state of golf is interesting. I do think it's in flux with the live stuff. And sort of in that vein, as we get into, I want to get some sleeper picks and what you guys think about going into the weekend here as the major ramps up. We talked about this on the Twitter spaces when we did the Masters, of like pressure to win in these situations, because majors are legacy builders, right? Like this was the conversation around Scottie here when he was dominating the field, and everyone's like, we haven't seen this type of domination since Tiger and since peak Tiger in terms of strokes gained against the field. But those top 10 finishes weren't resulting in wins, and he wasn't winning majors, that's where the legacy is. We hear all about, Jordan Spieth trying to chase that Grand Slam. We hear about guys like Ricky Fowler, Max Homa. This is a big one, right? Like he's got to get a major victory at some point to ensure his legacy, right? He's a fun golfer. He's a good personality. He doesn't have that major success. The constant pressure for Rory McIlroy of not having that additional major and stuff like that. And I even Buffalo Golf and Social, Jesse over at Buffalo Golf and Social, I hit him this week with a question of, if like Brooks Koepka wins again this weekend, does he overtake Rory for the best golfer since the post-Tiger era in terms of legacy? Because that's how big majors are, right? If you start winning these majors, you get that legacy. So we'll kind of send it around the horn here. Tilt, who do you think has the most pressure right now this weekend to post a victory and get a major here on the board?
Well, I mean, I would say based on the leaderboard as it stands right on Friday morning, I think there are two names that stand out. The first is the guy who's at the top right now, and Xander Schauffele, right? Because he's had so much success in his career. He's a FedEx champion, right? He's had wins. He's been part of Ryder Cups, but he just hasn't had that major victory. I mean, you could kind of almost say the same about Tony Finau, though I think, his biggest thing for the last couple of years was that he just couldn't win at all, but he obviously won twice last year. And so kind of there. And so maybe there's not as much pressure on Tony to win the major because he's got just the wins. But to me, it's Xander and Rory, because Rory, last major he won was at Valhalla back in 2014, and he's been kind of sitting on that number now for 10 years, right? And there was when he won that US Open at Congressional, when he won those majors early on in his career, and he's that one Masters away from the Grand Slam, there's been a lot of pressure on him to perform in the majors.
And now he's the face of the PGA, right?
And now he's the face of the PGA, and now he's going also through his own sort of off-course stuff with the divorce of his wife. So it's like there's pressure on Rory to win, and he's right up there. And like he's had success in majors, so I don't want to take that away from him. He's had a lot of top fives, top tens over the past several years in these majors, but he hasn't gotten that other one over the hump. So I think there is some pressure on him to kind of win another. Probably less pressure on him to win a PGA Championship than there is to win the Masters, because that would obviously complete the Grand Slam, but there is still pressure on him. I don't think there's a ton of pressure on Scottie Scheffler because he just won the Masters and he's still kind of in that.
This morning.
Yeah. And so to me, the two names that stand out are Xander, who's at the top looking for that first major, and then Rory, who's just right there in his sights.
And before I toss it to Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Like, if say Brooks comes out and puts up a couple, we know Brooks shows up in majors and he's still within striking distance here. If he comes out and puts out a couple good rounds, gets himself into contention, like in my opinion, I think that might be the best thing for golf right now. If it was like Xander, Rory, Brooks, final day, final Sunday, everybody's in contention for the major.
Mm-hmm.
If Brooks overtakes that run of Rory and wins one, is his legacy, is he the best golfer of the post Tiger Woods era in terms of legacy, or will Rory still hold that title?
I think Rory's going to have more wins, right, overall, but Brooks is going to have the majors, and that's kind of how these conversations end up happening when you talk about professional golf. It was like, you know, Sam Snead had the most wins of all time, but didn't have the most majors, and it's like you have all these guys like with tons of wins on the PGA Tour, but maybe not a ton of majors, right? Or like maybe only one or two. So
Greg Norman, right?
Yeah, Greg Norman.
His legacy's been hit.
He won one major, I think, maybe two. Yeah. The Open Championship. But yeah, like he was known for falling apart, you know, on the final day in majors, whereas Brooks is known for elevating his game in the majors. So I do think like that the conversation probably comes down to those two guys. For a while, you might have been able to put Spieth in that conversation, although I think he's dropped out now from that because he's gone through some stuff. But I think that it would come down to that conversation of Brooks versus Rory. And there's a lot of people that don't like Brooks's personality, and there's a lot in Rory's kind of like this likable guy. Like I can see that being, you know, a factor in people's opinions on this, but there's absolutely no denying Brooks's ability and his ability to get up for the majors. Like that guy has like another level for the majors that really we can't ignore. It would be a fun debate. I don't know. I'd probably still give the edge to Rory just for the overall broader success, but that all came in major success came in a pretty early concentrated period of his career. So it would make for an interesting discussion.
Yeah, for sure. And Chris, what do you think on that? Like who's got the pressure on him here going into the weekend?
So to me, the guy with the most pressure is probably Justin Thomas. He's won this tournament twice. He's playing in his hometown. You just know what getting a win like this would mean in terms of getting him back to that place where he was before he missed 4 out of 5 cuts in major events. He's 7 back right now after the first 18. But when he won the PGA Championship in 2022, he was 7 back going into the final round. So
Mito Pereira.
Thanks, Mito.
So you can't count him out. Yeah, part of that was Mito falling apart more than Justin catching him, but it was a little bit of Justin just.
Yeah, you still got to catch him. Right?
No, he caught him, man.
Yeah,
he came down to the last hole. So
yeah,
right. So yeah, I mean Justin, and then to a much lesser extent, I do think that it's going to be tough for Michael Block to tune out the noise from all of the magic from last year. And, hearing him talk, like he doesn't seem like the type of guy that lets pressure get to him too much, but there's got to be some sort of pressure to have a good showing after what he did in this tournament last year.
Yeah.
You got to give Michael Block credit for on quadruple bogeying the second hole yesterday and kind of getting it together after that, right? I mean, he had a pretty decent round after that second hole. That one hole just kind of derailed him, but I'll give him credit for bouncing back pretty decently after that, because that happened super early in his round.
Real quick on Michael Block, man, I feel like Twitter is just, I know Twitter's full of haters, but the way the conversation about Michael Block this week on Twitter was wild to me. Like, people are so sick of it and all that stuff, but we haven't heard a ton about the Block party and Michael Block, but you should have expected it coming into this weekend. Like, a fantastic story that riveted the golf world. We were all supporting him at a super hard course. He got himself an exemption into this tournament. Like, the way he played and the pardon my friend, like the balls that he showed to make that chip shot and putt to get the exemption, playing with Rory, like big stage, being a club pro that goes into a major and plays the way that he did, we should celebrate that. I think it was great for the game of golf. Cool. It was a super cool moment. And I don't give him his additional 15 minutes of fame this week, because we should remember it. It's a cool moment in golf that, again, sort of like this Scottie Scheffler thing, there was people that don't even understand golf or follow it or know. And everybody a year ago was talking about Michael Block. Like, it was a huge thing. And so the people that are tired of hearing about it, like, I get it. He's not going to come out and post
he's in commercials now too.
Yeah, he's got his own commercials. But this is great for the PGA of America. Like, those guys, this wasn't like drawing from a lottery to get in. Like, you earn your way. These pros that play in this event earn their way through qualifiers to play in this event. And it's huge. They're not on the PGA Tour. They're not dealing with this type of pressure. Like, I've never played as an adult tournament golf, but in high school, there's a huge difference of like playing rounds with your buddies versus playing competitive rounds like for something. And I froze up in competitive rounds. Like, we only had maybe 15, 20 people watching our like big tournament at the end of the year. And I remember being off the tee box and my hands like literally shaking because I wasn't used to that type of pressure. I couldn't imagine being a club pro who's teaching old dudes at a really nice country club, you know, a month before this, then having to go to a major championship where a crowd is surrounding you at a chip shot to get your exemption. Like, it's a cool moment. Just let the guy have his moment there. All right, let's transition out of PGA talk. And I think the most relatable part of what our podcast is going to be about, again, is our personal.
We want to do sleepers first?
Sure. Yeah, we could do sleeper. Although I will say I don't have any sleepers, because I honestly think that this major and the way the course is playing is going to benefit the guys at the top of this leaderboard and the best golfers in the world. So I actually don't have any sleeper picks for this. I think for me, it's going to come down to Xander, Rory, if Scottie can keep his mental game attached through this. And then I think Brooks will find himself in contention here too. So I don't have any sleeper picks though coming out of nowhere for this. Do you guys have some sleepers?
I don't necessarily have a sleeper, but the way Morikawa finished yesterday, I'm having a hard time ignoring that. If he can get that putter going, he's one of the better iron players. He's got that nice little like fade that seems to work well on this course. There's a lot of left to right holes for righties on this course. I mean, I just feel like if he looked like mentally dialed in yesterday coming down that back nine. So I know he's -5 and it's not a sleeper. He's 4 back, but like there's a lot of guys bunched up there in that -5, -6, -4 range. I would not surprise me if Morikawa came out of this thing.
Yeah. I did have a few sleepers real quick. So tied for 5th right now, Robert McIntyre, who hasn't won on the PGA Tour before, but he has 3 international wins. He made a name for himself at the Ryder Cup last fall when he went undefeated for the European team. He's at plus 8,000 right now. Mark Hubbard is another guy. He's tied for 2nd after the first round, plus 6,600. He's had 13 top 10 finishes, still 6 top 5 finishes, but no wins. The thing is with him is he's in the bottom 25% on tour in terms of driving distance, which is an issue with Valhalla being the 3rd longest course on tour this season.
Yeah. And like Stock says here, if it continues to get wet, which they're anticipating, it should favor some long hitters.
Yeah, the ball's not going to roll out on the fairways. Yeah. So over 7,600 yards for Valhalla. It's a pretty long course. So my favorite sleeper is Maverick McNealy. We were talking about him earlier. He's plus 12,500 in betting right now, but he's in the 71st percentile in driving distance. So if you like the idea of someone who Sort of had a good first round and also maybe has the driving distance to keep up with the front of the pack as we get into the weekend here. Maverick's had 14 top 10 finishes since he joined the tour in 2020, and he's currently in that 7-way tie for 5th. A couple other guys, who drive well and have showed well in the first round, Thomas Detry and Taylor Moore. They're both long shot in terms of odds, but they're both also in the top 12 and also in the top 67 percentile, 70th percentile in terms of driving.
I like that. All right, let's transition over. I think this is one I'm most excited about, is to discuss our games, where we're at. I know, this was really why this podcast started, our DM groups of sharing those adventures as we go and the encouragement that we give each other. So Till, I'll let you here start a little bit before we get too deep into it. Tell us a little bit about, you started the show talking about it, your background into golf, how many years you've been playing, how often you get out. You live right on a country club. We talk about that all the time, and sort of where your game is currently at, and where what you've been working on, and where you're looking to grow here this golf season. You have a little bit of a longer golf season than we do up here in Buffalo, so you got a bit of advantage on us, which I'm always jealous about.
Yeah, so I started playing at the age of 7. I was in upstate New York, played at a course called Dinsmore Golf Club. It was like a state-owned course right off the Hudson River. My dad would take me out. We'd walk. Got my first hole-in-one when I was 10 years old, which was pretty sweet.
I'm still searching for one.
Yeah, me too.
Got 3 total. So I played a lot when I was like from age 7 to 10 to 12. And it was age 13, I moved down to North Carolina from New York. And I kind of stopped playing for a couple years and then picked it back up maybe when I was like 15, 16, and kind of had been pretty consistent there. But then like college, I stopped playing like almost altogether. I would only play a couple times a year. And then when I finally kind of like settled into like the life after college and like wanted to really get back into the game more, we decided to join the club that we're at now, which is basically the club that all my friends in high school were part of when I was in high school and I wasn't, right? And that was our home course for our high school team and all this stuff. And so I was just so tired of like trying to find things on Golf Now and like finding tee time. So we're like, let's just do this. It'd be good for our family. It's like family membership, whatever. My wife plays, so that was also a big consideration as part of like getting this membership. But yep, I would say the biggest thing that's improved for me from being like I would say realistically, again, this gets back to my point about like being real and honest about your scores. On the surface, doesn't look like a whole lot's changed, but I was probably a lot more loose with my scoring back before I had a handicap. Right now I'm a 10 index. I've been pretty much floating around between like an 8 and a 10 index for the last 4 or 5 years. I would say what I'm working on right now is being a little bit more consistent in hitting greens. I'm pretty good with driver, pretty good at getting the ball in play off the tee, and I'm pretty good at putting. My biggest thing right now is that I don't hit a lot of greens. I'm that classic guy who hits a good drive and then fucks up the second shot.
Approach kills all of us, yeah.
But it's also helped my short game, right? And so I've had a lot of practice like chipping in shots around the green because I don't hit a lot of greens. So like my short game has definitely improved over the last couple years. Being able to go out and work on that that's definitely been the area of my game that has improved most over the past 5 years. But the one thing that I still really need to work on is hitting more greens. That's my number one goal for this season. Hit more greens. I'm confident enough in my putting. I have a good putting stats. I'm pretty good off the tee. I would like to get my index down to like 6-7 would be my goal. But that is a little ambitious, I know. But I think if I can hit some more greens, I can get there.
On that, in the off season, are you putting in the work to specifically work on that? Is it maintaining your game, maintaining your swing, things like that? And when you talk about hitting greens, what are the practices and things that you're doing? Or is it just going out and playing more and getting ball striking down while you're playing? Where are you at with the work to get there?
So a couple things I do, right? So like you said, we have a longer season down here. So I get to pretty much go to the range year round. Now in the winter months here, we still hit off mats. It's not like ideal, but there's a couple things I'm doing. Number one is when I'm at the range, I'm not just like blasting balls, right? Like one after the other. I'm actually like picking out targets and like going through my routine,
Are you a
figuring
launch
out.
monitor guy? Do you?
I don't have a launch monitor at the range, but I'll bring my rangefinder and
Yep.
shoot the flags at the range and be like, okay, like I'm gonna try to hit like 4 or 5 shots at this flag, this distance, and like see how close I can get to that. So that's one thing that I work on. And then the other thing when I'm out on the course that I'm really trying to work on is looking at where pin positions are on the greens and like not letting that affect my decision making, because it's really easy to be like, oh, that pin's on the right side of the green. Let me be a little bit more conservative and aim left in case I miss. Then I have like maybe an easier up and down. When in reality, what I really want to do is maybe just think about aiming more for the center of the green every time. And that way, if I do aim left on a right pin position and I hit it left, I'm like, well, I could have just aimed straight at the center of the green and been fine. Like, and stop.
Keeping that cone of dispersion in mind.
Yeah, and just like not being so afraid of like of missing left or right. It's the like distance. I'm not too. That's not so much like distance control. Like I'm pretty good at club selection, but like left and right, I need to stop. I need to not be as afraid to miss the green and just more or less aim for the center of the green. Stop worrying so much about pin position, and then relying on my putting that, okay, if I hit the center of the green or even the left side of the green, if the pin's on the right, I'll still be able to get down in two from there.
Gotcha. And before we get over to Chris and get his take on where his game is at, what's in your bag right now going into this year?
Yep. So I've gotten fitted. So a couple of years ago, I got fitted for Titleist AP3 irons. So that's what I'm gaming right now is from as far as irons. I've got the 4 through pitching wedge in the bag for the AP3s. I've got a Sim2 Max driver in the
You love
bag.
that thing.
Love that thing. And I actually just recently put my old 5 wood back in the bag. I recently bought
Oh,
a new
you
5
did.
wood.
Okay.
Put my old one back in. It's an R9. It's an old TaylorMade R9, but I hit that thing so consistently. I don't have any other woods in the bag. So I have my driver and my 5 wood. I don't really find the need to have a 3 wood all that often. And then I just got, as you guys know, a wedge fitting. I got 3 new SM10 Vokey wedges in the bag right now. And I'm still rocking my Nike Method Converge putter that I bought at PGA Superstore like 10 years ago. It's like,
You get a good putter. You just,
I mean, like putting to me, like, and we'll talk about this more in future shows. It's up here, man.
Yeah.
Like you just gotta. So that's what I've got in the bag right now. And typically, I historically have always used a Pro V1 ball, but I'm now recently in the last year or two started using the AVX.
yeah, it's a good ball. Chris, give us a little bit of rundown, background on your game. Sort of give us what Tilt just described, where he's at.
Yeah, I mean, so similarly, I wasn't as avid a golfer as David was when he was a kid, but I did play quite a bit up through high school, or at least through the first like half of high school, and got pretty decent. I did some junior PGA stuff for like 1 year, and I hated it, and it turned me off to the game because we were talking about a little while ago. Tournament golf is a lot different than going out and playing with your friends, and it just didn't work for me. It didn't make me feel good about the game. And I got away from it for quite a bit. I mean, I played a little bit here and there, but for years, like nothing to write home about. I got into it, started getting back into it a couple of years ago. There's a 9-hole course around the corner from me, basically, and it just like started going and started to rediscover what I loved about playing. And then sort of dipped for a little bit. And last year, for the first time in a long time, I played like a ton of golf. At least by my standards, it's not a ton of golf by a lot of people's standards, but I think I played like 30 rounds last year, which
That's a lot.
good.
That's
That's
a lot.
good.
That's a lot of rounds.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly felt like a lot to me, and it definitely had a huge difference in terms of improving, because I think I was playing somewhere around like a 34 or 35 handicap when I started to get back into it, and just having all of that time on the course last year. Now I'm around a 27, which is still quite high. I mean, obviously I can't compete with you guys and get, guys who have had a lot more time out there, but it's certainly helped me to sort of reframe my goals around the game, and just thinking about it from a perspective of time on the course as opposed to um, the scores, because I think that the more time you have out there, the scores are going to drop. So if we're talking about goals for the season, what I'm looking to do is just try to play more. I mean, I think I did the math and I played somewhere a little over 10 holes a week last year, if you over the course of the year. And obviously, in the summertime, there's getting more rounds in, but I like fall golf too, so I'll do it. But if by the end of the calendar year I've played, 12, 15 holes a week, maybe, then I'll feel like I'm getting that time into, and the to get the scores down, and the handicap will kind of continue to drop. And if I don't see progress there, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But I kind of feel like I will, just by time on task.
What are you doing in the off season to hit your goal? But outside of the goal of playing more, obviously, in terms of trying to, one, do you have an index goal for this year, or is it just play more? And if you do have an index goal, is there certain things you've been working on to try to decrease it?
Yeah, I don't have an index goal, because I think that if I start to think that way, it's going to affect the mental side of the game a little bit for me, more than I want it to. And in the off season, it's just, trying to find those moments to work on the short game, get to the range. I don't have a range that's like super convenient, so that's a little tougher, but
Yeah.
I found ways to, just kind of mess around even at home with putting and chipping practice, when I can, and that it just kind of getting, hitting more balls. I think, something that Tiger said to someone on camera at one point, like, you just got to hit a lot of balls. And it's so true. I mean, you just got to be comfortable feeling what the ball feels like coming off the club, and um,
Yeah.
eventually, like, yeah.
Speaking of clubs, what's in your bag right now?
So I started with a pretty mixed sort of hand-me-down bag, because I was just, coming back to the game. I've been slowly evolving as I've kind of figure out what I need, and what is going to help. So I'm playing with a Titleist driver, TS1. I've got a Titleist 3-wood. I've got some off-brand irons. That's kind of like the next thing, I think, is to get some nice irons. And I did upgrade the putter. I got a putter fitting towards the end of last season.
Mhm.
Nice.
I got the new AI1 Odyssey putter, which it's pretty cool. I mean, it was there's more to putters than I ever really thought about, with in terms of the way that the shafts are constructed, and
Mhm.
how much weight you have behind the ball. And so the putter fitting, I think, helped to sort of find the style of shaft that worked best for my my swing path. And it feels great. So that's been certainly a nice upgrade. And I have some kind of random old school, like I've got a legit wood, like a hickory
You do, yeah.
wood rescue club. It's like a 7-wood, with like an iron plate on the bottom of it, and it's for cutting through the rough. And it's something that that my grandma used to carry in her bag, and she, I used to play golf with my grandparents when I was a kid. So a little bit of nostalgia, but also I mean, I feel like I hit it pretty well. And then I've got this chipper club too, which I
Yeah.
yeah, I it's got a putter grip. And some people are like, what the hell is that thing? But and I sort of got away from it for a while, and I was struggling to, I got a couple of Vokey wedges, which was a huge um help, I think, for my like 50 to 100 yard shots. But around the green, I was trying to use these wedges and just not really getting the right feel for it. So I had a lesson with a club pro around here, and he was like, "You've got this chipper. Like, what? Why aren't you using this?" And it's like, "Yeah, I have had this chipper. It's like literally the only club I've got from when I played as a kid. It's been in the bag the longest, and I do have a great feel for uh, for different types of shots with that club." So my short game is slowly coming around just by kind of re-embracing this random club that, is probably worthless to most people, but it feels right for my game, I guess.
Only play the clubs that you're confident with. That's my
Right.
thing that I learned here over the last year. So my game, I took up golf around the age of 13, maybe. I had a friend who we lived on a road that was butted up against a private country club, New London Country Club, actually, which one of our One Pass members actually works at, which is kind of fun. And his grandparents lived literally, they had a stone wall separating them from the country club. So his grandfather had a bunch of old wooden clubs like the 7 wood you use, Chris. He had them just laying around the garage. And so we would sneak those and hop the fence and go out and play one of the holes that went along their property until grounds crew chased us off. And that was sort of my introduction into the game of golf, was just being kind of punks on a private country club there. And then later at night, we would sneak on and dig balls out of the water and then go sell them like the next day to the guys. And they knew they were their own balls and they loved it. And so that was our introduction to the game of golf. And then that was when I lived in Connecticut. And then I moved to Maine, and my first friend that I met in Maine also happened to be a golfer. And so we both saved up. We were working at the time as young kids, and we saved up and bought ourselves membership to a golf club that was a few miles up the road. It was Bath Country Club. And we were actually just reconnected pretty recently after 20 years of not talking. And we were talking about riding to the club in our bikes with our clubs on our back. And it was like a 3-mile ride uphill to get to our country club and go play all day long, and absolutely obsessed with the game. Loved it through high school. We both lettered in golf for our team. And it wasn't cool. We got made fun of a lot for showing up for golf matches, and we had to have our stupid looking golf polos and hats that our school provided for us. And lots of those people that made fun of us are probably maybe a little bit jealous that they didn't get into golf earlier now, because I see them on Facebook and Instagram. They are golfers now, even though they made fun of us at the time. And then after high school, though, golf disappeared from my life. I started working in the kitchen industry. I worked all weekends and holidays and summer. I lived in a tourist town, so summers were just 80 hours of work a week. There was just no time for golf, and none of my friends really participated in golf, which made it hard. It was all disc golf. If anybody's familiar with disc golf, it was a lot of that. And so
sometimes.
Yeah, and I think you guys know how life can get. It was honestly, I blinked in like 17 years and I just I had no range, no golf at all in my life. And then my wife's job, a lot of guys have come in that work with her, and they were they had a golf group, and they were all going out and golfing all the time. And she's like, why don't you go and join these guys? And so I put together a terrible set of clubs. I had a TaylorMade Fire Soul driver from back when I actually played 17 years ago. It was about a 20-year-old club. And then I found some 1986 Ben Hogan Magnums for like $25 at a yard sale, and a random putter. I did end up actually upgrading the putter real instantly. I got myself a Stroke Lab, an Odyssey Stroke Lab. I figured if I was going to make an investment, it was going to be into the putter originally. Yeah, and my ramp up was real slow, though, because I understood that I'd been out of the game for so long. I understood how frustrating the game can be. There was part of me that maybe thought it was going to be like riding a bike, where I would just get back on and be as good of a golfer as I was when I was 17 years old. And that was not the case at all. It almost was like I'd never swung a club at all. So if you've taken a break, I encourage you to really start swinging and get out there and hit. I ramped up slowly, range sessions, hitting clubs, going out. And my wife was like, dude, just go play. This is ridiculous. Why are you so adamant about not playing? And I'll tell you why. The first time I went out to Sheridan Golf Course here in town of Tonawanda, which is a difficult municipal course. And I posted like a plus 40 or something like that. The course ripped me apart. I had no feel for the game. I was super frustrating. I hated everything about it. And I was so mad at myself. And I didn't play any more rounds for the rest of that year. And I took the entire offseason. I went back to the drawing board, got lessons, really grinded at my game, and figured, all right, next season, it was going to be about posting as many rounds as I could and getting out as often as I could. And I think I put up 50 rounds last year, and really was trying to grind at my game. I got myself down to, I think I started this year at an 18 index. And over the off season here this year, my wife surprised me on my 40th birthday by driving me over to Club Champion and getting me a driver fitting. So I got to get out of my fire soul from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and get myself into a Ping G430 fit to me. Really incredible, game changing. The technology jump that I was able to make from 20-30-year-old clubs to a driver that has modern technology is unbelievable. My swing necessarily hasn't gotten any better, but the forgiveness on these new clubs is incredible. And because of that and that itch that I got from that driver, I also went ahead and got rid of my Ben Hogans and got myself fitted for some irons. And so I'm playing the Ping G430 irons as well, which are also incredibly forgiving. I'm currently waiting on, I got fitted for wedges and they haven't come in yet, but they're on their way. I've got some Cleveland RTX wedges coming in that should fix some gapping issues that I'm currently having in my game. And so I started the year right about an 18 index. My goal is to get sub 15. There's 3 guys that are in my golf group. So I have a golf group that ranges. We got about 16 dudes. We text all the time. They go out almost every weekend here, different courses around Western New York, which is another topic that we're going to get into, is the great golf and the accessible golf that is available to us at here in Western New York. And we go around to different places, and not that my golf game isn't necessarily, I want to beat everybody, right? Like I'm only competing against myself, but I do have some friends that I would like to be playing with and that I think my abilities are on par with, but my index wasn't where their index was a year ago. And I was, a shot or, a stroke or 2 behind them almost every time, but I didn't feel like my ability was. And so I went out, invested in new clubs. I did a couple different lessons, spoke to a couple different guys. This winter we have an indoor dome here in the town of Tonawanda. Great facilities. If you are a North Towner in the town of Tonawanda, we have an indoor dome. I was there 2 to 3 times a week, working on different things. To Tilt's point, really my goal this year, besides the index movement, is more consistent ball striking, right? Like I think that I can, when I get good contact, I can play with even 10 index players. I believe it's a matter of being able to do that consistently and eliminating, last year my game would have a really nice drive and I'd hit the fairway and then I'd duff a shot on approach. And then that would turn into a different duff and I would, compound bad shots. And that's where you get 7s. That's where you get 8s plus on the scorecard. And I'm not a guy, and most average golfers are not a guy that's going to make up for an 8 by birdieing a couple holes, right? Like I'm trying to play bogey golf, which doesn't eliminate the bad golf. And so for me, it's ball striking, consistency, trying to build that up. So that was really where I was grinding this winter on the range. And so far I've been posting quite a bit of rounds. I think I've already got 15, 20 rounds into the year so far here. And my index is dropping. I've already about hit my goal. So I'm down to 15.1. I think I'm trending in the right direction to maybe even go sub 15 here this year. I know I'll have some rounds that go back up into the 50s and push my index up and down a little bit this year. But the ball striking for the most part feels like I'm getting there and getting good. And so, yeah, I'm happy where the direction I'm heading. We were talking a little bit offline. The one thing I probably got to do is not play as much as I am right now and work on some practice and break up the desire to go out and play and post rounds and move my index and break it up a little bit more with some practice and getting to the greens and working on some of the short game stuff. I will say, Chris, to your point of the chipper, and I'm waiting on my wedges, I think the thing that has been unlocked the most for me this year has been course management and decision making. I talked to you about this a lot. Yeah. I've unlocked, instead of pulling out my 58 and trying to make like a nice spinny shot onto the green and attacking greens like that, I'm pulling out my pitching wedge and I'm just small chips and bumping runs and playing greenside. And that has been putting me in position. My strokes gained putting. I was looking at it today. I'm almost a scratch golfer in putting strokes gain because I'm putting the ball within 5 feet, within 10 feet of the hole with this bump and run. And it feels like I've unlocked a cheat code. Like once I get within 40 yards, 50 yards of the pin, I'm pulling out that pitching wedge. I'm not even really using my 58 that much unless I have to get over something or get out of sand. And I think a lot of golfers would scoff at that. I play with a lot of guys that just want to have a nice high lofted and place it right on the pin. And I'm bumping running. And sometimes it's just hitting the fringe and running up to the green and getting myself as close as I possibly can, because I know I can't hit plus 10-foot putts, right? I'm going to 2-putt, possibly 3-putt, and that's what kills my score. If I can just keep it to the 2 putts, I should be able to bogey every hole, and maybe once in a while get my chance to look at a birdie. But if I'm playing bogey golf, I'm going to hit my goals. My index is going to keep dropping, and that's about where I'm at. And then ball. Last year I was playing whatever I could get my hands on, and still a little bit today. Like, I've had people buy me and give me balls, but something I've fallen in love with is the Max Fly Tour ball. It tested at my Golf Spy on levels with Titleist, but the price is about $20 less, $15 less per dozen. And that seems to be a sweet spot for me, is that Max Fly. So I encourage anyone that is real snobby about their ball to just give it a try. Go buy yourself a box of Max Flies and give it a go. You're not going to get the consistency that Titleist offers from ball to ball. But I would argue none of us are that good where we're going to know it. Like, we're not tour players. And so if you can save yourself 15, 20 bucks, give
Certainly
it a shot.
Someone with a handicap up in the 20s like me, like, the ball doesn't matter all that much. Like, I have been trying to pay attention to the type of ball and see like what difference it makes. And I've been enjoying playing the TaylorMade Distance Plus balls, which are not as expensive as Pro V1s, but
I've got some in my bag. A buddy gave me some of those Distance Plus. They're great ball. That's a great ball. I'm happy for it. This is going to be, Lauren, I'm not calling you out here. I love you. I think you're fantastic. We're going to have a full episode about this, because the drive for show, putt for dough, I personally don't agree with, and I get blasted on Twitter for that. I've never been ratioed harder on Twitter than when I say that this is a fallacy and it's not accurate and that the data shows. So we're gonna have to do a show all about this and discuss the philosophy, and that'll be another topic. That's probably the conversation about golf that I love the most, is philosophy surrounding course management, philosophy surrounding the analytics and data that we're now being able to get. That stuff didn't exist back when I was in high school and getting into golf. Like, strokes gained, I think, was just coming out. We didn't know some of the things we know about golf now. And so I love those conversations about golf. Lauren will fight me. I will lose a fight to Lauren for sure. I don't want that smoke. But I think that's going to be an interesting conversation we have. And sort of to wrap this up, those are the things, talking PGA, growing our game here as we go through the summer. The highs and the lows, and being honest about it. I'm not a scratch golfer, and even though I feel good right now and I'm trending in the right way, like, there's going to be rounds here where we come on and talk, and it's like, guys, it blew up on me, and I'm posting snowmen all over the place. Like, I know that's going to happen. And I think it's a relatable conversation about golf that I'm excited to get into with you guys.
Yeah. And I think the fact is that I think most people are going to be able to relate to that, right? I think that I'm sure there's going to be some people in here that are scratch golfers or whatever, but like, this is we're going to have a good range of conversation around like skill sets and what you're doing for your game and shots and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's interesting to me as someone who, like, again, is above 20. Like, a lot of the golf content that's out there is geared towards people who are sub 20 indexes. And I mean, there's people who aren't quite that good yet, but are trying to get better. And there's a lot of interesting conversations to be had around playing. I think for the love of the game, like, where do you prioritize the things like being outside, being social, versus improving your scores and hitting good shots versus
well, we'll say this: scoring does not always equate to how you're hitting the ball.
We talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
So scoring is not the best measure, in my opinion, of like where your game is headed. It's more about like how you're hitting the ball, feel, the mental state of your game, confidence. Like, you could get some unlucky bounces one day. You can get, when you're hitting the ball well, you can get some lucky bounces when you're not hitting it well. So
last week,
the score at the end is just like, okay, well.
Last week I had the most like quintessential golf experience, right? So I posted 2 record lows on 9s for me back to back. They were both 43s. That for me was as low as I've gone. Trying to break 90 is kind of my thing in terms of that scoring goal. But one day felt like I should have shot. Like, so another goal of mine is to not look at my score while I'm playing, right? Like I
Yes.
used to last year, I
100%.
would go into the 9th or 18th hole, check where
That's
I
the worst,
was,
man. That's the
and then
worst.
like triple bogey whatever hole it was and just blow up whatever my goal was. So now I'm not even I'm not looking at score, I'm not checking it. And so it's feel, right? Like, and at the end of the round I look at my stuff, and the first 43 I shot, I honestly felt like I was going to be plus 50 on the round. Like everything didn't feel good. I wasn't making good contact. I didn't feel like I was a good golfer. And the next round, I felt like I could bend space and time, and that I was going to shoot like sub 40 even. And then both of them ended up being identical scores at the same course. And that's just golf in a nutshell. Like, you can play and feel like you're playing like crap and score well, or you can feel like you're the best golfer you've ever been and still score the exact same thing that you did. That to me was quintessential of how this game is and how it just messes with your mental.
Yeah.
Anything else for the people here before we get out of here and go hopefully watch golf for the rest of the day here?
Good first episode. We're strong hour 20. Definitely feel like this is going to be something that, yeah, we're gonna have a fun time doing this. I can tell.
Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Like we got on the banner here for anyone who's just listening, please like and subscribe at Cover One Golf on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. It's the same handle. As we try to build the channel, it really helps if you engage, give us comments. We'll check the comment section, interact with you guys there. Same thing on Twitter. We want this to have that community feel like we were talking about before. So share your stories from the course, where you're at in terms of your own game. Even if you're not really like thinking about things like your index, if you're just getting out there and playing for the first time in a while, and what was your score? What was the highlight? What was the low light of your round? I think sharing that stuff really helps and kind of makes it a more engaging sport. So we want to kind of share that with all you guys, and thank you again for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys for taking time out of your day here to talk. Nate, I hope if Nate listens here, I hope that he feels better. He's got some injuries he's battling through, and it's keeping him off the golf course. And so we're hoping that he heals up and gets back out there. And then, yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing to talk. We had a lot of good viewership here today for our first episode, so I appreciate people giving us a look, giving us a try. Hopefully those turns into likes and subscribes and all that good stuff, and show support for what we're doing here. Until the next time, that's about it. We are out.